2021 is the year I came out. I was living with someone. We were in a relationship at the time, Kanu. She just went into it. Like, she would just start referring to me as she quite fast.
Wow.
I would misgender myself for a bit. When she loved me, despite of my transition, it really helped me to overcome my own internalized transphobia.
Before transitioning, you were transphobic.
I am still transphobic.
So a lot of transgender individuals, they are faced with some of the most critical decisions when it comes to the body and the mind. What phase are you in?
So I a lot of times say this line, I transitioned into 2021. And sometimes I'll be like, I started my transition in 2021. And the reason is to kind of disrupt this idea of there always being a fixed journey.
Absolutely.
Touches my expression of gender.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Life is a continuum. It's a flow. It's a continuous. So I think it's very important to realize that.
Yeah.
I think that people have a problem with people who keep changing or change because they don't want to change. You're born in such a body that's God-given, and who's defining
And
God?
why are you questioning it?
In Islam, there is a sense of bioessentialism. My body was modified. I mean, I was born and then I was circumcised.
In the get-go.
So, I mean, are you saying God made a mistake?
What's the ideal world?
Ideal world?
Utopia.
Complete ideal world.
Yeah.
It's the utopia of radical feminists where there is no gender.
Meri love lingo, love lingo, love lingo. Suddenly made it love lingo.
Today on Love Lingo, the podcast, our guest is someone I've known for quite some time. When I met her, she was referred to pronouns of he and him. We worked together, and the last time I met her was maybe in 2020 or 2019, way before the pandemic. Tracing back in time, this is clearly in 2021 when I was scrolling on Facebook and an image appeared. And this image was an image of a transition. It did evoke emotions. I have to be honest. I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't confused, and I wasn't shocked either. This did evoke emotions like inspiration. I felt inspired because I thought to myself that this person is being so authentic and is accepting their life and living the way they want to. And it got me to reflect in my life and see what I could do with my life.
The word that you used I liked a lot was authentic. Anyone who becomes true to themselves will encompass that word, and it will transcend, and it will mean and reflect upon others. And it would mean so much to others as well when they see authenticity in someone. And that's probably the most beautiful thing in the world, authenticity. Hi, this is Arsala Qureshi.
Hi, this is Jas Sagu, and today's topic on Love Lingo is the power of trans and transitions, gender, culture, and self-expression. We have a bold content creator, filmmaker, writer, creative strategist, and an advocate for LGBTQIA community, Rayyan Monkey. Welcome to Love Lingo.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. That was a bunch of kind words that make me feel a little awkward, but also make me blush and feel really appreciative about being able to make someone feel inspired.
The world has changed for you, hasn't it?
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Oh, wow. The world has changed. Like you said, I think like for the majority of my life, because I did transition late, I have completely gone by he, they, he pronouns, right? I would be referred to as masculine, so he pronouns. That in itself is probably, the biggest change. Let's start from there. 2021 is the year I came out. In 2021, my therapist somewhere in August asked me, Rayyan, think about your name, your pronouns, etc. The first therapy session. And I got into therapy. I'm like, I'm going to come out after all these years. I'm going to need some help. So I got into therapy, first therapy session. We talk a little bit about it. And she says, okay, for your next, I'm giving you homework. I want you to think about your name, your pronouns. What do you want to identify? Transgender, lesbian, gay, but wherever. Don't think about family, which is something we discussed in that first therapy session. Religion. Don't think about this. Just think about how you want to be referred. And I thought about that for a while. And that's how, I felt very comfortable. In a week's time, I'm telling her my pronouns are she. And that's how I'm going to go ahead from now. Like she and they, I'm comfortable with. It took me maybe, I was living with someone, we were in a relationship at the time, Kanu, and it took her really, she just went into it. Like she would just start referring to me as she quite fast.
Wow.
I would misgender myself for a bit.
Okay. You were in a relationship
Yeah.
at that point of time with a female?
Yeah.
And she was okay and went ahead with it, and she took upon your identity immediately? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so this is not the first time this would have happened in history. There's a long history for it where quite often someone realizes they're trans while being in a relationship or in a marriage, and then their partner kind of helps them through that. Oftentimes, like just recently, I met a friend who, Erin from UK, and she was in a relationship and the person kind of like just hard stopped, right, broke up, right? And often that also happens. Sometimes in India, there's cases where the wife will suddenly put a case. Sometimes, quite often, they are quite supportive. So I realized that I'm trans somewhere in lockdown in 2020. And the day that I had this memory that maybe we can talk about and kind of made me realize, the same night or the next day I told Kanu. And Kanu and me at that time were really good friends. And maybe we were in a bit of a situationship kind of a situation, but not really in a relationship yet, or not really, necessarily in love with each other. But she was completely there. It made sense to her. She had seen those sides of me that even Jas has seen. Like I say, at Lakme Fashion Week, at Lil Flea, etc.
That's
how I
where
would
we
dress.
first time met as well at the
Yeah.
Fashion Week. Yeah.
And so she had seen that. So when I told her, she said it made sense to her.
Mm-hmm.
We define our self-worth through how others view us, right? And it's only human to do so. It's kind of weird when someone gets too in the extreme of not being able to define, because then you're just defining yourself. So there has to be some kind of balance, and at least choose the people who you allow define yourself. And so when she loved me despite of my transition, it really helped me to overcome my own internalized transphobia at the time, and kind of get to like, oh wait, I can be loved.
So you said something really important here. You said that she helped you overcome your transphobia. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So you, before transitioning, you were transphobic.
I am still transphobic. And it's a very weird thing. I can see your face, Arsala. But I'm still transphobic. We were talking a little earlier about patriarchy.
Yeah?
Yeah, of course we were.
Yeah. And we will.
And, we were talking about this term internalized patriarchy, which is when even women or other marginalized gender groups within the patriarchal system exhibit the same rules and dynamics of patriarchy and want to keep it going
They do.
because of the internalization of
And
this.
that's where generational trauma comes in, right?
And
So-
yeah. And the same way, I live and I continue to live with a lot of internalized transphobia. And it shows up in a lot of ways, right? Like one of the ways, most shallowest ways of looking at it is me trying to try really hard to define myself as a trans woman through a Western concept,
Got
a Western understanding, because the local understanding, the Indian one, has been, traversed, completely downtrodden through stigma that is associated with our representation in Bollywood, etc. So a lot of trans women, and it's not, it's not the best thing that we do, but we try and look more like the Western trans women, because we're trying to, if we have that transphobia we're living with, right, that society also lives with. Yeah, that would be one example of that, but definitely live with a lot of transphobia.
So do you catch it? Like when you're feeling transphobic, do you catch it, or do you address it right then and there? Or is it a realization, hey, was I a little transphobic? Was my reaction a little off today? I have to,
I think both. Increasingly now I catch it in the moment. And I feel like that's the thing about, like, a lot of people feel like, you can't adjust to these things. Like someone's like, oh, you want me to use they pronouns, but it's so hard. But actually we are. It's just a commitment from inside.
Rayyan, you transitioned in the year 2021 during the pandemic.
Yeah.
You were 29 years old and you identified yourself as a trans woman. This was during the pandemic. Did that have any impact on the transition? Because during the pandemic, a lot happened. A lot of people lost their loved ones. A lot of people went into this introspective mode where they there was trauma. There are so many things that was happening.
And I think people looked at death very closely because they thought that, hey, every morning they woke up, they did feel gratitude.
Yes, and would you feel like that was a catalyst? The pandemic was a catalyst for you to come out and identify as a trans woman?
I think almost completely, definitely that statement that the pandemic was a catalyst, one of many catalysts. For example, like, being able to dress at Lakme Fashion Week, that would also have been a catalyst. But the pandemic was one such big one, massive one. A lot of us in the community, even here in Bombay, we call ourselves lockdown babies, lockdown queer babies. And it's such a term because it's so common. So in June of 2020, the first lockdown, Disclosure, Netflix releases Disclosure, the documentary. And this is a documentary I highly, highly, highly recommend to everyone. I'm so glad. Sometimes I know people have conversations with me about transgender films. I'm like, if you haven't watched Disclosure, let me talk. But so I'm watching that documentary, and at this point I'm home alone in the lockdown, and there's a scene in it about Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, Jim Carrey.
Okay.
And it talks about how in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, there's a highly transphobic scene at the end where there's this character who is revealed to be trans in the most absurd way. And when Jim Carrey realizes he's like, brushing his teeth and putting detergent down his throat and trying to like puke and everything. And when I'm watching that at home in lockdown alone, I hit pause and I start to cry. And I start to remember my own memory from when I was maybe preteen. When I was a preteen, I don't know exactly when, I'm reading a magazine. I used to read a lot. So in Dubai, there would be a weekly magazine called Friday Magazine or The Weekend. And I would read this cover to cover. And I'm reading that once. And there's a story about 6 Iranian trans women who have transitioned through gender, like that time they would call it sex surgery, gender affirming procedures. And this is all like when I'm 12. So, we're talking like either 90s or early 2000. I remember thinking to myself, even as that young, that there's something about this that is really like speaking to me, right? Like there's like something about it that makes me feel like, okay, I want to know more about this. There's a procedure here that says that I can be a woman. And that for some reason is very interesting to me. So I am there thinking that maybe I want to learn more about these procedures while also thinking, hey, Rayyan, you're a Muslim person. Hey, Rayyan, in your society, in TV, in the law, it's all wrong. Right? The law is like, this is illegal. In society and in Bollywood, they make fun of such people. In your family and your religion, it's completely considered a sin. So you can't do this.
That's why it's so pertinent and important for trans people to take control of their own stories, of coming out, of even the vulnerability behind it, but the power dynamics when people who identify or who change their lives start telling their own stories, you will see the trajectory change, and you will see the kind of attachment and authenticity that it will bring out in the world, which I think is very important. What do you
Because
think
I
about
feel
that?
cisgender will always not be able to resonate
Heteronormative society.
to the transgender community. There's always going to be that gap that a cisgender in whatever capacity cannot convey what a folk from the transgender community can.
But you have to tell your
To
own
a great
stories.
extent.
Yeah. No, I agree with you because power comes to the people who tell their own stories. That is the truth. This is a story that Rayyan is telling from her perspective.
Yeah.
And even if I misgender it and I can apologize, that would mean that I'm respecting, I'm not breaking a boundary, I'm correcting myself.
Right.
But those people who say that, hey, listen, I didn't misgender you, that's how I see you. That's the problem. I have a problem with those kind. I really do.
So a lot of transgender individuals, they are faced with some of the most critical decisions. Obviously, the first one is self-acceptance, the most important one, when you accept yourself. Going forward, then there are a lot of other decisions or choices you need to make when it comes to the body and the mind, wherein we're talking about like different procedures, we're talking about RT, hormone therapy, we're talking about blockers, we're talking about gender reassignment surgery. What phase are you in, Rayyan?
So I like to think about this is something I learned more as I transition. But so I a lot of times say this line, I transitioned into 2021. And sometimes I'll be like, I started my transition in 2021. And the reason is to kind of disrupt this idea of there always being a fixed journey. So a lot of people have this idea that the transgender experience would be a fixed journey. And
Yeah.
then there's like, which part of it are you
Yeah,
in? So if
right.
you see Alok Menon, I'm
Yeah,
giving
of
that
course.
example because so
Yeah.
famous,
It's
but
very
they
gender
are
fluid.
definitely someone who embodies the beard and the hair,
Right.
and will embody that into their expression of gender, into however they come off as non-binary, so not necessarily only mass, not necessarily only femme. So in the same way, if you take it on a more like biological sense, there are some populations within the planet where the women have big foreheads, where the women have broad shoulders, at least when you compare them to another population. So when I am embodying gender, I might only do as much as I feel
Absolutely.
touches my expression of gender,
Right.
Yeah.
right?
Life is a continuum, it's a flow, it's a continuous. So I think it's very important to realize that. And so that's when I think that people have a problem with people who keep changing or change because they don't want to change.
Yeah.
They are stuck, they are stagnant, and they are very happy with that kind of
With that kind of setup.
with that setup, with that situation, because they are only seeing themselves from that
Yeah.
POV.
There's this thing about trans lives and trans experiences that is very it plays around with this concept. It lives on the concept of change, right? Like to be trans is to embody change, because you go from one gender to another. If you're non-binary, you are assigned a gender at birth, and then you express yourself in a very different way. It's literally the reason why the Hijra community is called Hijra, because of that. Hijra in Arabic language comes from the term Hijri, which is how the Muslims calculate years. And it means migration. As human beings, we are naturally averse to change. We find comfort in a space, in routine, in people. It's human to find comfort in routine. But that's, being human is not just giving into our default natures. Because some of our default natures are our worst natures. Being human is also recognizing that we live with other humans, we live in societies, we live in civilizations, we live in structures, right? Otherwise, a very dark example, but I was overcome by sexual urge would be a good defense for rape,
Yeah.
right? Otherwise, that would be a good defense, but it's not. We have law, and you can claim insanity and you can claim defense, but there might still be repercussions for these actions because we live in a civilized society. So in the same way, we can recognize when we are being severely averse to change and take a step back.
And I think building an awareness to our implicit biases is very important in terms to break the heteronormative thinking. Heteronormativity, to me, beneath that, I think, is transphobia and homophobia. That's just what they are. They are very scared by the change that it might bring into this world, and a new world order will be created. But hey, we forget. We came from somewhere we don't know. We have come on Earth for a tangible amount, whatever amount of time, and then we leave for an unknown place. Why are you so scared of someone becoming who they are when you don't know where you're going next? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Wow.
This kind of just alienates the belief system where no, you're born in such a body that's God-given, and who's defining
And
God?
why are you questioning it in the first place?
So for me, these kind of arguments fall flat because I don't see any meaning. So who's defining God? First of all, hey, on that point that you mentioned God, let's talk about it. Muslim. You're a Muslim.
You just now said this thing about the body and the
I'm gonna leave
repulsion to
this.
change, right? This is a little controversial. In Islam, there is a sense of bioessentialism, like, for example, even around don't modify your body. This is one of the reasons that people use as why you shouldn't get tattoos. And I'm not trying to tell you that both of these things are allowed. I'm just trying to raise a question here, which helped me in my trans Muslim experience. My body was modified. I was born and then I was circumcised.
The get-go.
So, are you saying God made a mistake?
So that's a contradiction right there, right?
Yeah, right? Like, are you saying
You
Allah
got it.
made a mistake
That's
and
a
you needed to
great point.
correct it after I was born?
Rayyan, have you ever experienced support or resistance from family or sibling when you were on this journey of transitioning into a trans woman? Would you like to talk about it?
Okay, let's talk about it, but only if we can cover the entire story of it, right? Not the entire that whatever I say, meaning
Okay.
that I will say it, but then I don't want to
Edit it out.
edit out some of the important disclaimers I'll make before I say it. Right?
Okay.
So one is like we're talking about internalized transphobia and how powerful it can be, just like these other internalized forces like misogyny or patriarchy. If it took me so long to get to the point of being able to even be ready to start my journey to transition, and I am the trans person in the equation, I can have empathy for how much of a challenge it is for my family. I'm the trans person. For them, it is their sibling or their child or whatever, right?
Right.
Or nephew or whatever. But for me, it is my own experience, and it is so powerful, the stigma that we live with, so powerful, the transphobia in every aspects of society, and up until recently even law, that it took me this long to live my own truth. So I can empathize that it's going to take them some time to work through their own transphobia and etc. And I think that empathy is something that I always feel like whenever I share this part of the story, people edit it out. And I get it when it's a 60-second reel. I mean, it's still sad because it misrepresents them. It makes them look like, oh, they're villains. Oftentimes, oh, they're Muslims, so they must be bad. But no, the problem isn't necessarily them as individuals, as much as the system that they are part of, right? That they're living inside of. And that had a power on me and has a power on them. Before I came out, I spent a lot of time researching like what it's going to be like, YouTube videos of Indian kids coming out to parents, South Asian kids coming out to parents, brown kids coming out to parents, conservative kids, Muslim kids coming out to parents, and I read all these blogs and these articles, and I spent like literally 2 to 3 months doing that amongst other things, but that would be part of my background research. And then I created this one huge Word document in which, taking from things that I was picking up from everyone else, I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to come out to them. And it was raw. I was like, okay, this will take 2 hours, something. Because when you're coming out, especially in the start, and especially to people who matter as much as family, you want to make sure you communicate everything. At least some people feel. In fact, when I did finally get around to coming out to them, I knew that they won't continue to be in touch with me. Like, this was given my understanding of my family. I knew that they're going to cut contact with me. My hope was that eventually, after a while, they'll come around to talking to me. And so far, it's been 3 years. And my mom does talk to me. Like, I just wished her on Eid. She'll catch up with me sometimes. But she'll also ensure that she's made it clear that she sees me as her son. And she will refer to me as, my beta. And she'll make sure she does that so that I am aware that she doesn't accept this part of it. But at the same time, she does want to keep a line of communication open with me. She doesn't want to cut me out of her life. And so we are part of each other's life, even if in a very distant manner. The other siblings are still going through their own journey. I'm hoping that they will come around to it. But so far, they haven't. So at that time, it was quite, when I was coming out, when I did come out to them, a lot of these videos, a lot of this research told me the things that people will say. Even the psychologist who gave me my gender dysphoria diagnosis told me, Rayyan, okay, are you going to come out to your parents? I'm like, yeah. Okay, let me tell you some things that are going to happen. I'm like, okay, tell me. He's like, see, your mom will go through the stages of grief. So, the 7 stages
like
of grief.
death of...
Yeah, like there's anger, negotiation,
denial.
There is, my mom will go through it. He's like, she will go through that because she has lived with the idea of he, Rayyan the he. And now, whether or not they continue to be a part of your life, you are compelling her to give up that idea. And so powerful are these ideas within our brains of children and family and parents that she will go through that same stages of grief. And she will come around. Acceptance is one of the last stages, or the last stage. She will come around to her form of acceptance, but she will go through this. So that's the period I'm in right now. Not too much support from them. One of the biggest privileges that I have is, of course, they got me my bachelor's degree, which allowed me to get work. The other thing is I stay in a house that has been in our family. So even though it's not on my name, I'm not paying rent. Other than this, everything else the work I do for the last 10 years, 8 years has been me kind of being independent and standing, except these privileges that I do live with. And I knew this. This is one of the factors to me coming out. Okay. And this is something that even whenever someone DMs me or they'll like, message and they're like, Rayyan, like, what about, like, when should I come out? Like, I'm thinking about it. I'm in a Muslim family. I'm like, you come out when you're financially independent. You come out when nobody can tell you that, hey, this is my house. If you're going to stay here, my rules. Right? And it is really sad that that is a reality. But this is not a country where people protect queer people too much on the streets. Right? So if you are in a situation where if you come out to your family and you live with them, they're going to be like, get out. You should have some people you can go and live with. Maybe you have a job. I had all of those privileges when I came out to my family. Right? If you know that your family is going to accept, then great. For whatever reason, you know that they want to accept, great, just go ahead and, come out to them. But otherwise, you don't want to be in that situation where your family can have that much power over you.
Right.
Right?
So I think for your parents also, for your family, the child that they thought they had and the person in front of them are two different things, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I think in cases where people or parents are not accept a person immediately, they're the ones who need more help in understanding that, hey, listen, maybe you need to take a look, the dissonance between, yes, you've given birth to someone, but they are not your property as well. And they are going to become their own person. And I think that's a cultural issue as well, because I think in Indian societies or in the subcontinent or around the world, even in Muslim societies, children are considered your property, right? It's
language also, yeah.
So that's a dismantling of that idea has to happen before we become who we really are.
So I would like to recall an incident that happened last year, precisely during this time, or maybe I'm not sure which month, but yeah, I was at this social gathering at this social place, and I went to the washroom there, and I witnessed an underlying tension between a trans man and some other folks, cisgender folks, in the washroom. And Rayyan, have you faced problems in any such social or public places?
Yeah, I mean, I recently faced one, and that was quite a disturbing thing. But funnily enough, I faced it this year during Pride Month just now, like literally 2 weeks ago. And for all of this time, I remember the first washroom I went, which was October 2021, and I was traveling to Goa, and I went to the airport, and I just went to women's washroom for the first time, and it was fine. Even though I look less passing or less femme or less cisgender passing than I do today. And I did manage to go into a washroom. And since then, it has always been that I go to the women's washroom and I'll get some stares sometimes. Sometimes some of the people inside the washroom, irrespective of age, there have been students also who have stared. There have been, older women also who stared. Age has nothing to do with it. So it had become to the point where I kind of, with like a lot of, microaggressions, like these tiny things that happen in your daily life that women ignore, cisgender women, they ignore it because they go through life and they get used to it. Like, for example, walking on the street and having men stare at you. You don't necessarily clock all of them in real time. Maybe in subconscious time you do, because that's how the human brain is. But most of the time you'll walk past, be like, this is my life. This has been happening my entire life. They stare, right? In the same way, over time, transgender people normalize the microaggressions in their life. For example, like this kid, or for example, when people laugh, or when, I'll tell you about that when we talk about films, but like when people get scared of looking at me. Right? We kind of normalize this. So it got very shocking because I was in Geo Drive. I'm in Geo Drive Mall, and Geo Drive Mall is doing a queer pride event, which is happening over there for the third or second time in a row. It's not even their first time. They're doing a queer pride month in Jan. They're doing a pride event. It is Saturday. And they created a gender neutral washroom. Now, the thing is, gender neutral washroom is a choice by any reading of the Trans Act. I can choose whichever washroom I want to go to, irrespective of the occupants of that washroom having an issue with it. Why?
Got it.
Because I'm
That's
transgender.
exercising your right.
Yeah, I'm transgender. My ID says I'm transgender. Even if my election card didn't say that I'm female, which it does, I would still be legally allowed to go into the washroom of my choice if I'm trans and have a registered transgender ID card, which is government recognized. If that is the case, then there wouldn't be any conversation. There wouldn't be a case also. Police will be like, shut up to whoever is having an issue with it. But that is a choice I have. Now, for me personally, as a transgender person, my election card literally says female. So who wants to say what? Like, I will, challenge
Right.
the out of y'all. Like, just come at me. I'm just waiting
I'm
for
waiting
someone
for
to be.
you.
Yeah, I'm waiting for someone
That's
to be.
why that Supreme Court ruling was very important.
Yeah, that happened in 2014, precisely 10 years
still,
back.
we are literally 10 years away from that. And I'm at this Pride event and I'm going to the washroom in a mall. And it's also not like, people can say, but class, and this is Geo Mall, this is freaking Geo Mall,
Yeah.
right? Like, there's Massimo Dutti and there's Montblanc and there's Gucci. These are the brands. There's an Apple showroom there. So, I mean, if you're thinking that, only elites are that, but I'm going to the washroom and this, the housekeeping staff, she comes towards me as I'm going towards the women's washroom. I've been to this mall before. I've been part of the same event working it before. I'm going to the washroom and she's like, excuse me, there's gender neutral washroom for you here. You can go there. I just made a face and I went into the women.
She's choosing for you.
Yeah, she's choosing for me. And she, it's also very annoying because what you're saying is that by just looking at me,
Yeah.
you know that I'm
Yeah.
trans. Like, you're bringing my transness into the conversation.
Got it. Yeah.
And if you're doing it in a public space, you're doing that to others. Like, as in, you're calling me out for others to see.
Yeah.
And I just made a face and I slipped into the washroom, the women's washroom. She followed me into the women's washroom. And by the time I'd gotten to a door, it was a weekend, it's Saturday. There's a lot of people in the freaking washroom. And she follows me into the washroom. I'm standing outside a stall. She comes in and she's like, sir,
Oh.
there's a gender neutral washroom for
Oh.
y'all made outside here. I looked at her like this expression of just like,
She misgendered you. That could have been a liable
what the-
suit right there.
I mean, it can potentially, but it never has. Since 2014 till now, it never in this country has been one time an actual case. It has never been for misgendering. So it can be, but it doesn't happen. And when she said that, she said, sir, in this washroom like that, I mean, everybody turned at me. Whoever's washing, women of all ages, and they're all now staring at me. So for someone like me, in my experience, I like to just slip through places, like go inside, get out of here. Because everyone anyway stares. That's why I love my little bangs and hair. I just do this and I'll go through places and nobody needs to look at me. I don't need to make eye contact. And this lady's coming into the washroom and going, sir. So everybody's like, it's a women's washroom. They're like, what is going on here, right? Like everybody whips and I'm just like, I felt so bad for the rest of the day. That thing ate me. I did go and talk after I used the washroom. I did go and tell her that, what did you do? You just came and like said so, and
right?
she's like, I'm so sorry. It just came out by mistake. And like this in this situation is avoidable. Don't freaking be Geomall hosting pride events if you can't sensitize your
staff. Because you're establishing the world's biggest malls, the world's biggest brands are coming here, but you're not sensitizing them how to behave with anyone who walks in through that doors.
World's biggest weddings also. That's how
But do you think in comparison to other countries or third world countries, do you think India is making any significant strides in recognizing transgender community?
So look at 2023, right? One of the most major reasons that I feel I took so long is law, religion, and representation. These three things, right? Like culture overall. If you look at 2023, there was Tali that came out, which is about the life of Sri Gauri Sawant, the true real life trans activist.
The activist.
There's Trinetra Haldar in Made in Heaven. There is this girl in Patal-lok. So Safed came out somewhere in December or Jan last year. Again, transgender story centered around trans experiences. Although problematically, they did use a cisgender actor to play their main protagonist, and this cisgender actor was male. They also used a cisgender female actor, a woman actor, to play another trans character, that is Barka Sen Gupta. That's the name of the actor. And she, I don't know why she said this, but she did say this to the director, saying when she was being cast, she told the director, that's literally how it happened, is how can I play this character? I'm too pretty to play trans.
And did she get away with it?
She didn't necessarily. I mean, I think she gets away with it as in her life continues. She still gets cast, and no casting director is like, oh, we're not going to cast her because she said that. So in that way, I do think. But when I did rage about it, and other queer, like Yes We Exist, Gazy, they all picked it up, and then they shared it. So then she had to do another interview in which I don't know. I think she just she just worsened her situation because she answered something like. I wasn't talking about the privileged trans women who've had surgeries and can afford gender affirming procedures. I was talking about the ones on the street that nobody wants to talk to. I was talking about the ones who have to do sex work. And so, what are you saying?
She got away with that as well. So double jeopardy. She got away with two things.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you called her out because people like this need to be exposed for what they say. Because you are going to hold her. I was not saying you can hold speech against someone because this is hate speech. In my books, this constitutes as hate towards a certain community that you live with.
I mean, there are. So, I think I started this thing with what you asked about, is there any progress and is there any within India? And there is massive, there's no way to deny that. Yes, of course, Safed has these flaws and that's the entire point, right? We have Trans Act, but there's only 2 years in prison if you rape me. Right? We have this representation, but we still want to cast someone like Sushmita Sen instead of a transgender actor. And we will give, excuses like if we don't cast her, who will watch it? Or it is a very powerful story, so you need a powerful actor. But these are the things that leave us. We're getting there, but we still need to work a lot, right? Because cinema has repeatedly taught you to be afraid of people like me. Sadak is a movie that came out in 91. Sangarsh is a movie that came out in 90s.
Yeah, I can never forget, even with Sangarsh, I remember Ashutosh Rana was a trans woman. And when I saw the trailer of that film, there's this scene of the Ashutosh Rana looking clearly into the camera screen and making this screaming, screeching sound. And as children, we are going to be like, oh my God. And yes, as a child, I was scared.
Yeah.
But I remember that trailer till date. So when you mentioned the film Sangarsh, that image came to my head. And that was Ashutosh Rana. And he was apparently playing the role of a trans woman who was also abducting children or something.
Okay, so the thing about Bollywood is, clearly, let's be honest, what it doesn't understand, it makes fun of, it mocks, it represents it. Yeah, it mocks at it. It's let's take a laugh at it. Whose expense?
So now you said about mocking. So mocking and humor is such a despicable part of a representation.
Yeah, it is the worst.
That's even more than scared now is the laughing. So I'll be walking around and it happens so much. It doesn't matter where, again, all of those places I told, it can be young kids, it can be Gen Z young kids, it can be millennial, it can be working professionals, it can be parents and family.
All the beautiful people out there who get easily offended, please remember this, especially the heteronormative people. We are not against you. We are just saying that let's make it a more inclusive world. You're in the majority now. There might be others who might be in the majority in the future. So just let's be more inclusive. That's all we're trying to say. And these are stories that we want to share. These are not stories of exclusion, but stories of inclusion. And I think that matters.
How do you deal with the mocking and also the times when, you feel like I am not the one who's threatening here. Why are you even being threatened by me? So how do you deal with these unpleasant emotions on a daily basis, Rayyan?
It's not the healthiest thing, but a lot of disassociation. So a lot of leaving the space, going into my earphones, hiding behind my hair, trying to ignore these things. The reality is you actually can't. Nobody can. Right? People who live in environments where they have to deal with a lot of microaggressions for whatever reason, whether it's workplace, sexism, women, cisgender women, trans women, it actually takes a toll on your mental health. But overall, it's quite trying and burdensome on the mental health. The other way that I do deal with it, I literally just don't go to places that once or twice burn me.
Rayyan, so I want you to take me through a very significant moment in your life. And I would love it if you could relive that moment and narrate it to us here on Love Lingo, of that one precise moment when you put your identity in the right perspective stood in front of the mirror and accepted your truth and also concealed it in the same breath, what were the emotions you went through during that time? And if you do remember that precise moment of your life, I would love to know.
It was, we spoke about Khan, right? The person I was in love with while my transition happened. 2021, I had moved to a forest, which is too much of a sidetrack to go into, but I was living in one wadi forest for 6 months and there's no electricity, just trying to live very basic. And I think my whole objective with that was to try and say, oh yeah, but what if I remove the city and the capitalism and the performance and the social media? Will I still feel femme? I did. I would be in the forest alone on a 64-acre forest. I was acting as a volunteer security. And I would dance under the moonlight, just myself, completely femme, doing the most feminist of fluid moves. And I'm like, yeah, there's nobody watching and you're still doing this. But during that time, while I stayed there, in January is my birthday. So while I stayed there, Kanu planned a birthday trip for me from there and I'll return there. We left in a car she had hired. Till the time we came back, over the next 2 nights, I was only wearing femme clothes. So we went to a place next to Murud, in that stretch of things. And she found a nice place to stay. It had a nice view. The entire time I was dressed femme. And from the time, and I still had my beard then. And from the time which you've seen, my pre-lockdown beard, I still had that beard. And from the time I get into that car and I get into my femme clothes, I was just euphoric. That birthday, what she did for me, what we did together, what we experienced was the point.
The turning point.
That was the point. It was a point where I knew I'm going to go through with this, no matter what the hurdles come. Wow. I'm 30, it's my 38th birthday, and I'm finally feeling like after 30 years of living that I've actually arrived in my body, in my own body.
Wow.
I'm now inside of my own body.
In sync.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about feminism and being able to arrive where you want to, I have to talk about TERFs because they are women and they are a part of the feminist movement and they are allies. They are bigger, they're allies as for sure. But I want your views on TERFs, trans-exclusionary radical feminists. What do you think their battle is? What do you think they're fighting? Because they were the ones who were asking the world, what is a woman? What is a woman?
I think one of the things that help us understand this is gender is a social construct, right? You said this, we said this, we were discussing it earlier. Gender is a social construct. Immediately, whenever someone says this, people go to an extreme. They're like, oh no, they're saying that gender is fake. No. Someone is saying that gender is a social construct. Please put that into perspective. Marriage is a social construct. Education is a social construct. Law is a social construct. Democracy is a social construct. They're all very
Only
real.
Life and death are realities.
Yeah.
That's it. Let's just put that into perspective.
I'm trying to say that extend reality to all of these.
Yeah.
They are all social constructs. And because they have bearing on your and my life, like law does, like marriage does, it is real.
Yeah.
Now, a feminist perspective, one of the radical, maybe extreme feminist viewpoints is that gender is not real, woman is not real, woman is just made up. Now, while woman is just made up, like the concept of woman, we agree, right? It is defined by men. It is defined. So I think the conflict arises when we talk about TERFs. It arises from how trans people embody gender. Because again, the second wave of kind of an extreme, I don't
feminism.
like using the word extreme, but this radical feminism had this idea that gender is just to be done with, put it out. Ideal case scenario, yes please. Ideal case scenario, let's throw gender out of the building. Yes please. But you can't, because gender has real consequences today. You can't suddenly say tomorrow that if you're going to pass a law that says there's no gender in this country and everything will change. People will still want men to get married to women and people will still want women to have children, right?
So I've spoken to radical feminists and this is what their point of view is. And I would love to know what you understand of this. And I spoke to a radical feminist. I said, listen, if inclusivity is what we fought for all our life, why are you because you've asked the world, what is a woman? What is a woman? What is a woman? Of course, men have written woman. We've understood that. Now we're empowering ourselves and writing our own stories. She said to me clearly that our stories are not their stories because femicide plays a very big part. women who are born women have been killed at birth not because they had any kind of disorder or anything, just based on the fact that they are women. And so, yes, their stories are very powerful, but they did not have to deal with that. That's where they come from. So they're saying it takes away from what our struggles are. Yes, in the higher arc of understanding, it does fit the puzzle, but it takes away from our struggles. What do you have to say to that? Because that's a point that when she made, I did not have an answer. When she did bring this point up, I said,
other than I get this point of view, right? Like, other than the female infanticide, what is the other example she might have given?
this is the biggest one she gave. And she also said that we were killed at birth. At the point of being alive, we were dead. So how can our stories be, and of course, let's be open to their understanding as well, because we're trying to understand ourselves so we can probably understand the entire picture. I did not have, and I'm being honest with you, I did not have an answer to when she asked me that how can our stories be the same when we were killed at birth, and so many women, historical evidence suggests that they were killed. Trans women were not killed at birth.
So, a few things. One is, that's why I was asking for like another example. This example is a very difficult example to have a conversation behind, because the people who are dead and not here to talk about it.
Absolutely.
So the woman who's talking about it survived. So you didn't die. I'm not taking away anything, but for you to have that conversation, you're here and talking about it, about how women are not there. So even if we acknowledge that women infanticide happens, it's a very difficult conversation to draw from, because you're talking about a conversation that, like, the person who's a victim is not here.
But collective consciousness and historical evidence,
If
it
you were to
still
take it
persists.
collectively for today, for the planet Earth, right? Infanticide is definitely practiced still in India, still in the Arab world, in some places. It's also not practiced in a lot of places at all, right? There are some places on the planet where it has not been practiced, and for 100 years you will not find evidence of it being practiced. So clearly that is not a universal woman conversation. So again, it becomes something very difficult to get behind. And the point I'm trying to make here is, that's the issue with radical feminism, is there is no universal woman problem.
So we are in the midst of the Pride Month. Obviously, this episode won't be aired during this month, maybe in the following months or so. We are documenting this super immersive episode with you, Rayyan. Even for everybody else out there, I would like to kind of mention this, that the first Pride was not a celebration, and it was a riot that was led by queer people of color, and it was a tough struggle. But what is an ideal world that you would like to wake up to as a transgender folk yourself?
Like a lot of the content I do these days is bubble content. And I don't know how long I'll keep doing it. But we're talking about curating how our images on Insta.
Yeah.
Trans people love doing that. Queer people love doing that, because literally that's the only place you get to curate, right? On my Insta, I have a huge fucking look at her. She's like a blob, like a model, and look at her. She's looking so tall because someone shot it from lower angle, etc. Oh, her, her makeup looks good. I will correct my green shadow sometimes. I curate how I look on Insta, right?
Right.
Part of the reason for doing that is to have this bubble where I can be joyous. When I scroll through my own Instagram, when I go through my own stories, when I go through my own reels, I feel like, oh yeah, Rayyan, you're living like a good life, and you look gorgeous and your friends are great. But when I go out in the public, of course, like we discussed, there's a woman who's crossing the road with her child, there's people who are laughing at me. This is my bubble, right? There is the capability and the ability to find joy. And we can do it. That's where I can show it in my bubble. When I go out with my friends to do go-karting on my birthday, or I go to someone's house and I sit and we talk for hours and we have a great time. We go to Alibag and it's all just queer-friendly people. And it's a great time, right? A huge part of the content I do is trying to showcase that you can have joy.
What's the ideal world for you?
Ideal world? Ideal world?
Utopia.
Complete ideal world.
Yeah.
It's the utopia of radical feminists where there is no gender. Is that possible in mine or your life? Not in my opinion.
Let's hope,
No, because we are the ones who carry it forward.
right?
One last question. How can we, all of us here in the studio, be a better ally to the transgender community?
Listen to them. Very often we live with facts, right? Like 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. So we are convinced that that is the way things are in biology, in gender, in sex. But maybe listen, keep your ears open to see if there is some variations. We know that as people who live in this time when we've gone through so much changes in women's right, we know that things are different, right? It's not what it was said. So listen. 2, center their narratives, center their stories. Don't try to be the saviors. Right? Because whenever you've done it, you see, like people be like, okay, but Rayyan, like Chandigarh Kare Aashiki is a good example. Ayushmann Khurrana and a cisgender woman. But Rayyan, we have to take a step. Bollywood Indian cinema is taking its first step. No. This is not the first time we've done a trans woman. Please, let's correct that. I have documented and I'll list you down 236 films that I personally have studied, read, or watched the film where there's transgender representation. This is not a first you're doing. You've always done it transphobic. Move aside.
Played by cisgender.
Played by cisgender people or written by cisgender people. Sometimes even asking trans people to act in it would be transphobic. Just recently a movie came out whose name I won't take, an actor's name I won't take. But you can figure it out. It's a trans woman this year, came out in a film. It's kind of independent film, but good budget. And it's in 3 parts, the film. So this actor, had to portray roles where they're being asked, it's a transgender actor, be more transphobic. Be more like that idea of trans people we have seen in the other films. Lower your voice, deepen your voice. This is the direction given. Move aside.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Move aside. Don't bring your own ideas. Let them do their narratives. You guys just facilitate. Be actual allies. If you want to be an ally, being an ally is actually platforming somebody else. If it is not your experience, move away, let them talk.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
Super. And before we wrap up, we would love to know if there's a book a book from your childhood that has shaped your perspective and stayed with you over the years.
Yeah. So there's this book.
I love your bag. I have to say that. I
Thank
just
you.
adore your bag.
Thank you.
Vibrant cat.
This is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
Okay.
And it's written by Judy Blume. So this book is actually quite old. This just last year in 2023, they finally made a movie on it. And the thing about Judy Blume's books is she's very famous. She's a feminist-leaning, progressive-leaning writer who writes children's stories. And now has even got, like, her more recent ones are also young adults, etc. What is interesting is it's a very tiny, very simple book. There's barely like 150 pages to it. Very simple, very short, very accessible for everyone. It deals with Margaret, who's a girl who's going through puberty and female puberty with menstruation and breast growth, etc.
I've read the book too, I love.
She's wonderful, Judy Blume.
wonderful.
She's
So this is for our camera. This is Judy Blume, and this is going to go into our library. And this is for our foundation, Evolve, which is Every Voice on Love. And we want to positively impact underprivileged children by distributing copies of these books that our guests come on the show and talk about, so that it can empower them, encourage them, inspire them, what they're going through, and in some way or the other resonate with another person's story, human story. Thank you, Rayyan, for being here, coming on our sets of Love Lingo, the podcast.
Being so authentic.
For being so honest, for sharing your insights
story.
on such diverse subjects that we touched upon today.
Thank you
you
for
so
having
much.
me.
No, of course.
And it's such a pleasure to see you and meet you
Yeah.
after like 5 years, 3 years. Yeah, pretty long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I wish
I'm
you all
glad
the
we did.
best.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
And, you want to say thank you again?
Thank you so much. And we have a little something for you that we would like to celebrate with
Thank
Rayyan
you.
on
Thank you.
the sets of Love Lingo.
Happy Pride.
Happy Pride, yeah.
To pat this beautiful cake.
Light it up. We have fingers.
Happy Pride.
Woo! Happy Pride Month!
I'm gonna get hurt with that.
Wow. to a life filled with dignity, equality, respect,
And inclusivity.
inclusivity. Ameen. I have to feed you.
First you eat it.
Woo!
People always forget me.
Also, don't forget to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and wherever you get your audio streaming. Do not forget to like, subscribe, and drop your comments on our YouTube channel, Love Lingo.
दुनिया कहती हम अलग है हमको इससे क्या हम है राही प्यार के ढूंढ रहनुमा पल में जी के देख ले तू कल का क्या पता लाए थे क्या तुम यहाँ कि लेके जाओगे खिड़कियों में अनजाने आगे पहचाने से तन्हाइयों में गुजारे क्यों तू अपनी जिंदगी दिल की जो बातें हैं सुन ले तू मेरी love